Hello learners, I welcome you all to the 12th lecture for the course on International Investment Law and the Environment. So in this lecture, we will be looking at how there is a move towards regulating foreign investment. So we've been discussing about certain incidents or certain expropriation that had happened and the fight between capital exporting countries and capital importing countries. That is what we've been discussing in the second and third week of the course. So this is the last lecture for the third week of the course. So in this lecture, we are going to talk about how there's a gradual movement towards regulating foreign investment rather than expropriating foreign investment. So all the fight that had happened was the capital exporting countries stated that you will have to pay compensation. Even now, towards the later part of the 19th century, the capital exporting countries started acknowledging the right to expropriate. Then in the last lecture, we saw how there were many international conferences, international resolution that had happened, which asserted the right to expropriate or right to nationalize of the hosting. Right. So that is something that we all know. So now even right to expropriate has started getting the significance, started getting acknowledged, but still the host state itself started moving towards regulating foreign investment. So where did that shift happen? That is what I am trying to capture it in today's lecture. So we will be having 4 segments in this lecture. In the first segment, I'll talk about the changing landscape of expropriation, and in the second segment, I'll talk about Iran's oil nationalization, and in the third segment, I'll talk about nationalization that happened in Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, and the fourth segment, which is the most important segment of this lecture, we will be talking about the move towards regulating foreign investment. So without any further ado, let us begin with the first segment. So what is the change in the landscape of expropriation? After Second World War, we do see the expropriations were there were frequent expropriation. Most of them were very modest scale, small scale expropriation. And at the same time, the host state started regulating foreign investment. It had asked for contract renegotiation, it had put licensing conditions. What we see here is the regulating foreign investment also picked up post the Second World War. Were there any large scale expropriation? There were very few. In fact, for instance, in Bolivia, 3 major tin factories were expropriated by Bolivia. And we could see, ideally, what would happen? Bolivia is expropriating 3 major tin factories. There would be some sort of a diplomatic pressure from the United States, right? We saw that in the, United States, literally the very next day when Bolivia settled its dispute with Standard Oil, announced a development package itself. That is how US had earlier interfered. But with the 3 major tin factories being expropriated, US did not issue a threat of use of force. That did not happen, but rather it was a prolonged dispute and all of that. The payment of compensation is actually tied to payment of back taxes and all of that. So that had happened. So there is this scholar Charles Lipson states that he sort of takes a guess why US did not proactively defend these companies. Maybe because US did not perceive Bolivia to be a communist country, because even though Bolivia was taking adverse measures against these tin factories, at the same time it was also attracting foreign capital. Inflow of foreign direct investment into the country. So that could be the reason why US did not take did not exert any sort of force against Bolivia in this particular case. This is what Charles Lipson says. But at the same time, we do see US did take or assert its power in the context of Guatemala. In Guatemala, United Fruit Company, a US corporation, was there, and it was a very profitable corporation. So now what had happened was, there was this guy, Jacobo Arbenz. So he got elected as Guatemala president, and then he took adverse measures. But in fact, the US actually started taking measures even before Arbenz got elected, because his predecessor, Arbenz's predecessor, Juan Arvalo, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the names correctly. So this Juan Arvalo, what he did was, he indicted local communist into the state bureaucracy, that time only the US started taking measures. In fact, the United Fruit Company itself reduced the export of bananas from Guatemala to other countries by 80%. I mean, it's a huge amount, right? It had reduced export by 80%. Corporations like W.R. Grace, Pan American Airlines, they stopped promoting tourism to Guatemala. US cut military assistance. World Bank withheld loans. All of these actions had taken place even before Arbenz got elected as president. But when Arbenz got elected as president, what he did was he expropriated over 2 lakh acres of land belonging to United Fruit Company. So expropriated 2 lakh acres of land belonging to United Fruit Company, and he stated that $3 per acre, a very nominal amount, $3 per acre will be given as compensation over a period of 25 years. So this sort of did not sit well with the United States. What United States did was, the State Department of United States started taking diplomatic pressure, started putting diplomatic pressure on Guatemala, but it was in fact CIA that supported Castillo Armas. Armas overthrew Arbenz government, and when he came to power, Armas was supported by CIA. He returned the favor to the United States by returning back the expropriated land and also by abolishing new taxes on foreign investment. That is how he returned. So now what we see here is, on the one hand, why is US taking very stringent measures against Guatemala? Why was it silent towards Bolivia? Maybe because this Guatemala incident could be seen as United States fight against communism itself, rather than asserting the rights of foreign investors. It could be seen as a fight of communism itself. Now what Charles Lipson say here was, even when there were expropriations post World War, in most other countries, they used to pay compensation to the foreign investor, except barring few communist countries. So there was not much of a problem with regard to something that would require states intervention, home states intervention. So expropriation were small scale, payment of compensation was there, because even if we see at the international level also, payment of compensation was being discussed about. I mean, the quantum of compensation, of course, there was a fight between capital exporting countries and capital importing countries, but the very fact that compensation had to be paid, that was not a problem. And here also we see that countries were carefully espousing the interest of certain investors. This is exactly what Britain had done long back. It started making differentiation between strategic concession and commercial concessions, which the United States started doing post World War II. Right. So now what had happened was, there were other few expropriations, which we could say large scale expropriation, because in the context of oil companies. That again, how did these expropriation actually contribute to the move or the shift towards regulation of foreign investment, is what we're going to discuss in the rest of the segments of this lecture. So in the second segment, I conclude the first segment here. So in the second segment, I will be looking at Iran oil nationalization, and in the third segment I will look at Venezuela and Saudi Arabia nationalization. Then we will discuss the move towards foreign investment, so regulating foreign investment, in the fourth segment. Thank you.